By the early 1800s, the United States had grown into a young but divided nation. The North had embraced industry and free labor, while the South remained deeply tied to an economy built on slavery and cotton. Though the Constitution had united them on paper, the cultural and economic differences grew sharper with each passing decade. Tensions simmered over issues of states' rights, westward expansion, and the morality of slavery. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 and the Compromise of 1850 temporarily held the nation together. But each concession only deepened the divide. The question was no longer if a conflict would erupt, but when. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln won the presidency without carrying a single Southern state. To the South, this was a clear sign that their voice no longer mattered in the Union. Fearing the end of slavery, Southern leaders acted swiftly. South Carolina seceded from the Union, and others quickly followed. By early 1861, 11 Southern states had formed the Confederate States of America, with Jefferson Davis as president. They claimed they were defending their constitutional rights, but at the heart of their cause was the institution of slavery. The United States stood on the brink of dissolution. On April 12, 1861, Confederate forces opened fire on Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor. The Union garrison surrendered after 34 hours of bombardment. The attack ignited a fury across the North. The Civil War had begun, and neither side expected the long and bloody conflict ahead. With war declared, both North and South rallied volunteers. Young men rushed to enlist, driven by patriotism, duty, or pressure. Families were torn apart as brothers chose opposite sides. The war touched every town, every home, and every heart across the divided land. In July 1861, Union and Confederate armies clashed, the First Battle of Bull Run in Virginia. Spectators from Washington brought picnic baskets, expecting a quick Northern victory. But Confederate forces repelled the Union assault, the reality of a long and brutal war. Union leadership, under General Winfield Scott, devised a plan to strangle the Confederacy economically, blockading southern ports and controlling the Mississippi River. It was nicknamed the Anaconda Plan. Slowly but surely, the Union would cut off the South's lifelines and squeeze it into submission. In April 1862, the Battle of Shiloh in Tennessee shocked the nation. Over 2 days, more than 23,000 soldiers were killed, wounded, or missing. The scale of violence was unprecedented. It became clear that this would be a war not of months, but of years. In the Eastern Theater, the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia, led by General Robert E. Lee, proved a formidable opponent. Lee's daring maneuvers and tactical brilliance frustrated Union generals. Despite being outnumbered, the South won key victories at places like Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville. On September 17, 1862, Union and Confederate forces met at Antietam Creek in Maryland. It was the bloodiest single day in American history, with 22,000 casualties. Though tactically inconclusive, it halted Lee's invasion of the North and gave Lincoln the victory he needed. After Antietam, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring all slaves in Confederate territory free as of January 1, 1863. It transformed the war into a fight not just for Union, but for human liberty. The moral stakes were raised. and foreign powers took notice. The proclamation also opened the door for black men to enlist in the Union Army. Nearly 180,000 African Americans would serve before the war's end. Units like the 54th Massachusetts proved their courage, even as they faced discrimination and lower pay. In July 1863, Lee again pushed north, leading to a fateful three-day battle at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. It was the largest battle ever fought on American soil. Union forces, under General George Meade, held firm. Lee retreated, and the Confederacy's hopes of invading the North were dashed. 4 months later, President Lincoln stood at the battlefield cemetery to deliver a brief but profound speech. In just 272 words, the Gettysburg Address reaffirmed the nation's founding ideals of liberty and equality and rededicated the Union to a new birth of freedom. Meanwhile, in the West, Union General Ulysses S. Grant laid siege to Vicksburg, Mississippi. After weeks of starvation and bombardment, the city surrendered on July 4, 1863. The Union now controlled the Mississippi River, splitting the Confederacy in two. Impressed by his victories, Lincoln promoted Grant to commander of all Union armies in 1864. Unlike his predecessors, Grant pursued a relentless strategy. He aimed to destroy Lee's army, not just win battles. The war became a brutal war of attrition. In the South, General William Tecumseh Sherman waged total war. His infamous march from Atlanta to Savannah in late 1864 devastated Southern infrastructure. Railroads, crops, and towns were destroyed. Sherman believed breaking the South's will was the key to ending the conflict. Despite the war's toll, Lincoln stood for re-election in 1864. His victory was not guaranteed, but recent Union victories turned the tide. He defeated Democrat George McClellan, signaling public support to finish the fight and abolish slavery for good. By early 1865, Lee's army was worn down, trapped and starving. Grant closed in on Richmond, the Confederate capital. After a long siege at Petersburg, Lee realized the end was near. His once proud army was on the brink of collapse. On April 9, 1865, Robert E. Lee met Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. There, Lee surrendered his army with dignity, and Grant offered generous terms. The Civil War, after 4 years of bloodshed, had finally come to an end. Just 5 days after the surrender, tragedy struck. President Lincoln was assassinated by Confederate sympathizer John Wilkes Booth while attending a play at Ford's Theater. The nation mourned deeply. Lincoln had led through the country's darkest hours and would not live to see its reconstruction. The South lay in devastation. Cities were burned, fields ruined, railroads twisted into iron wreckage. 4 million formerly enslaved people faced an uncertain future. The human cost was staggering. Over 600,000 dead, and many more wounded in body and spirit. In the years after the war, some Southerners romanticized their defeat. The lost cause narrative painted the Confederacy as noble and the war as a struggle for honor, not slavery. It distorted history and fueled decades of racial injustice. The Civil War's aftermath shaped the nation's future. It redefined citizenship, rights, and federal power. The struggle for equality continued through Reconstruction, Jim Crow, the Civil Rights Movement, and into the present. The conflict never truly faded. In the crucible of war, the United States was broken and reborn. The Civil War remains the most defining chapter in American history. It forged a new path, one marked by struggle and sacrifice, but also by hope. The Union endured, and with it, the dream of a more perfect nation.